Good morning, how are you? Let's start with the information. Today is April 16th, it's 12:01 p.m. here in Monterrey, Mexico. From here, broadcasting to the entire Hispanic community, well, to the world, wherever you may be watching us from, let's go with the information, with the details of what's happening. A harsh message delivered by an Iranian academic from the University of Tehran who claims that, well, the plan is to destroy the world economy. By the way, and obviously starting with the Middle East, a very harsh statement about the Iranian plans and also about what is happening between Israel and Lebanon, which contradicts Trump's position. Let's get into the details as the information starts coming in. As we get started, go ahead and give us a like, share. Thank you very much for supporting us. You know how to help. Check the description below for ways to support the channel if you'd like. Thank you. Now, what's happening in the world? Carlos Rubén Roble 2 p.m. in Cuba. A big greeting. Roble Blanca, Barceló. How have you been? By the way, what time is it for you? If you could let me know, I'd really appreciate it. As I said, it's 12:02 Pedro Nunez. How have you been? Greetings to the Spanish community and everyone watching us there. Let's get into the details with this image of a, fire that apparently happened in Pakistan. Huge fire in the industrial area of Qatar in the Haripur district. According to the reports, this is a gas pipeline. Look, I don't know, you tell me your opinion. Does it seem like a coincidence to you that these fires are happening? Yesterday in Australia, now in Pakistan, and the other day in Mexico, by the way? I mean, now it turns out that all the refineries, well, of course, they can potentially catch fire from time to time, right? Obviously, I mean, they're refineries, fuel, oil, you do the math as they say, right? But that in the same period, in maybe 2 weeks, these kinds of fires are being reported so often. In the United States, there have already been several, only time will tell, right? With time, we'll see if these are just coincidences or what's really going on. But in the meantime, this image also stands out. Let's play it. Listen to this. According to reports from southern Lebanon, explosions and attacks by Israel are being reported. We're going to talk about the details in a moment, but I'll show you the images that have been circulating recently. In the last few days and hours, there's been movement. We're also going to talk about, actually, before we get into the conversation, let's look at this image. Let's take a look over there. Those are drones attacking oil facilities in Taubze, Russia. According to the reports, there have been at least 2 attacks on oil storage areas. Obviously, let's look at this other image. There it is. There are 2 storage areas and a lot more images are circulating. Here, let's look at another one. In the background, you can see another one farther away. Local authorities confirmed that the drone attack may have affected an industrial area at the seaport without giving many details, but the reports, they talk about an attack on a refinery by Ukraine using drones. Well, drones are definitely what has caused this. Well, these wars, not just in Ukraine, have taken a very different course than what could have been expected. And it shows how technology, at the end of the day, is what is tipping the scales, so to speak. Isn't that right? Another image that stands out is about a very intense fire. This happened in a huge building in India. According to reports, a fire broke out in a slum area. By the way, right in the city, there are groups, there are areas similar to what happens in Brazil, so to speak, in these neighborhoods that are, very famous. The fire department had trouble reaching the area, but they arrived and are working to control the fire. A lot of scrap, a lot of trash is stored there, and many houses don't have the ideal conditions to survive a fire. It's really a terrible situation. There are several warehouses and terrible situations in Ghaziabad, India, according to reports, similar to the slums. Another thing to note, another image that stands out today, is the hail that has been falling in different parts of Saudi Arabia. Well, it's been several days now that I've been reporting to you about the amount of hail that's been falling over there. You can see how this has been going on for years. It looks impressive, these floods, tremendous rains in different parts of Saudi Arabia. Some of us think, right? I believe this could also have something to do with experiments they've conducted. They've invested a lot in that. They've invested a lot in making it rain. And I don't know, right? But I get the feeling that they're doing something right. Well, right in quotes, I mean. I mean, they're managing to get some results that are suddenly excessive and you can see it, but this just isn't. I mean, they say here that it's unusual. Well, yes, hail is unusual, but rain at that level isn't so unusual anymore, right? A couple of years ago, they showed how areas that were practically desert, like it usually is there, have turned green again, right? Desert areas at the end of the day, right? Let's go to the next image as well, which is quite striking. This is a pretty large military movement, by the way. According to reports, Syrian army forces are entering the Kasrak base. That's a base in the north of Azakaja, over there in Syria, a United States base or one that the United States used to operate, right? And now they've left and the Syrians are entering. I mean, the US troops have withdrawn, and now you can see movements. The Syrian army, that's the one you see there, is moving in towards that base. They're already taking it. We have to remember that Syria and the United States get along well. Syria currently gets along with nearly everyone except the Iranians. With Israel more or less, but it definitely gets along very badly with the Iranians, right? Well, that's part of what we're seeing right now, by the way. Just as we're about to move on to the news, something curious. These are the behind the scenes images of these robotic events they do, but the part that you don't see. Those robotic racing events they do all the time. Well, not everything is as it seems, right? You always see the start, those who make it, but a lot of robots don't make it, right? Just like regular races too, right? Some fall, some just stumble or whatever. These robots, something happens to them. Not all of them reach the finish line. And well, either because they get dehydrated or because their battery runs out or whatever, right? They simply fall and some robots just can't go on anymore, right? For example, this one loses a foot. Well, if its foot breaks somewhere, it just breaks. Well, a piece of its foot breaks off and obviously it can't control itself. Well, that's part of today's interesting images. Let's move on to the information. Let's dive into what's happening globally. How have you been? How are you doing? Look, first of all, we have to start with a pretty interesting character. A character who, well, isn't very well known here because he's someone who's more well known over there in Iran. I was doing a bit of research about this individual because I've seen that several media outlets have been publishing what he says. He turns out to be an academic who, as I understand, has Iranian parents. He was born in the United States. I think it was in Virginia, if I'm not mistaken, but he didn't grow up in the United States. But he is a voice at Tehran University, and obviously he is very supportive of the Ayatollah regime. Yes, his name is Syed Mohammed Marandi. Yes, a figure who is known in that sense. He is a professor at the Faculty of Foreign Languages and Literature. And, well, they would have published this, let's say, Iranian-American professor because he was born there, but he's really of Iranian origin. And, well, you know how all this is. He makes a very interesting statement because, after all, he is still an academic. But what he observes and what he has been commenting on for some time tends to be very accurate regarding what Iran does. Right? Let's say it's the point of view of an Iranian American, so to speak, but Iranian as well. The statements have generated strong international concern because they suggest that there is no negotiation, and even if negotiation is simulated, the real interest, the underlying interest, is to destroy the global economy. Just like that, right on time. I mean, for them, the enemy or part of the enemy is basically the whole system. Yes. They're going all in, as the Spaniards say, you know, they use that phrase, right? Well, I mean, they're going to destroy the economy, period, but whether that justifies the war or not, that's another issue. Huh? The point here is that, from his point of view, they're going to go after all the Middle Eastern countries first, the ones that are easy targets, clearly. They'll take out the oil first, then target everything else. The message presents a scenario: the total destruction of the critical infrastructure of the Persian Gulf, including countries like the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait. According to the reports, this is no small matter. Some of the world's largest oil and gas reserves are concentrated there. This is obviously vital for the global economy. The warning even includes severe climate consequences. Even an impact on the environment. The global environment is part of the calculation that has already been made. Everything seems to have been considered. The narrative suggests that the Earth would basically be devastated, since the goal would be to collapse the energy infrastructure as well as the balance of the global economy. It's really intense, isn't it? But I found it interesting, especially since he's one of those influential intellectual figures in Iran. At least for a sector of Iran, that's the vision. Correct, in quotes, right? For them. If this gentleman's scenario happens, the impact would be immediate. Energy markets and oil prices would soar, triggering a global economic crisis. It would suggest an international response, likely without military action and no longer led by the United States. There would no longer be any doubt about whether to enter the conflict or not. Now it would be a necessity. Making those kinds of statements would be part of a broader messaging narrative aimed at something else as well. And that's what I think. Wouldn't they try to dissuade the United States and Israel from continuing? I mean, like saying the intellectual vision, let's say within this world, the world of the Ayatollahs, is to take everyone down with them maybe. I think it's about making the United States and Israel feel they should stop and not continue, right? In strategic terms, basically it's about dissuading others, just like one day Trump wakes up and says we're going to wipe out civilization or something like that, or a civilization referring to Iran. Well, obviously this wasn't believable either, but the comment is so exaggerated and disproportionate that it could show a possible global effect. Let's go over several important details about what's happening in Iran and what's happening in Israel, but I find this topic really serious. Let's move on to another point. A series of movements have been reported in Iran that are drawing attention between Israel and Lebanon in a potential escalation. We already saw the images at the beginning of these explosions that have been reported in Lebanon. How are you? Good evening, good afternoon, Magic Luna all the way to Madrid, a big greeting. Israel has intensified its ground offensive in southern Lebanon, focusing especially on the Bin Yabel area, considered a strategic stronghold of Hezbollah. The defense forces are said to have deployed elite units such as Egos and Magian, as they're called, under Division 98. During the operations, high-powered weapons, grenade launchers, RPGs, rifles, Kalashnikovs, as well as anti-aircraft missiles were reportedly seized, allegedly used by the military from civilian areas. Israel has reportedly destroyed 70 Hezbollah infrastructure sites in the last few hours. They claim that these supposed 70 infrastructure sites were destroyed not in 24 hours, but in minutes, they say. They have carried out very coordinated operations. Yesterday, we talked about a series of 5 simultaneous advanced operations, for example. The Magian unit reported eliminating several fighters who, according to Israeli intelligence, were preparing attacks on their troops. They have detected and neutralized armed cells on the move in drone operations parallel to those of Magilan. In addition to Magian, there are other parallel operations targeting these groups. Underground weapons depots were found containing rockets, anti-tank weapons, mortars, and more grenade launchers, confirming an active logistics network in the area. The Lebanese Ministry of Health reported at least 11 deaths, including civilians, raising concerns about possible escalation. Now, at the same time this report is being given, there is a very different announcement from Donald Trump. But before that, I would like to comment on what the Israeli Minister of Defense said. Remember that the Israeli minister's name is Israel. Interestingly, he is not named after his country. Imagine being named Spain but not living in Spain, or being named Mexico and living in Mexico, or being named United States Gonzalez Gutierrez, I don't know, something like that, or United States Gonzalez Smith, right? Or something like that. Well, there it's just a last name, right? There they only use one last name. Well, that man we're seeing here, the Minister of Defense, what's his name? Israel? According to what the Minister of Defense reports, Israel is in a, well, Iran. The situation in Iran is at a historic crossroads, and he issues a pretty harsh warning, basically a threat. The Minister of Defense gives the warning today, this Thursday, that they are facing a historic crossroads and threatens new attacks if Tehran does not abandon its current policy. They are hardly going to abandon it. Not only are they not going to abandon it, I think on the contrary, it is getting worse, unfortunately. That's what we are seeing. In the end, if you take away those who were very extreme, but among the extremes, they were the fewest. Now only the most extreme remain, so what can you expect? So yes, it's complicated, and in the end, it was caused by a war that still keeps causing a lot of division in that sense. The Minister of Defense, Israel Katz, issued a direct warning, calling the moment a paradoxical situation, and said there is a historic crossroads. They insist that they must choose a future of stability and not an abyss of destruction. This refers to abandoning the nuclear program and its regional policy. The threat is not just rhetoric, it makes clear that there are targets that have not yet been attacked, and hitting them would be very painful. He says even harsher ones remain despite those already carried out. The U.S. Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of War as they call him now, right? Hegseth also confirmed that their forces are ready to resume an attack if the ceasefire fails. Donald Trump himself also issued that warning, saying that they are already ready to act in case there is no agreement. Basically, it's difficult because if you want to reach a peace agreement or a ceasefire, but at the same time you say, but if you don't achieve it, I'm going to fire at you even more, well, it seems kind of difficult to me that a ceasefire will happen. It seems complicated, doesn't it? In fact, it's kind of illogical to warn about it in that way. Now, if you want to reach an agreement, I mean an agreement where both parties win, not just both parties, let's say, give things up, but also gain something, and that's what it seems like. That's not happening, especially considering that Iran insists it will continue enriching uranium, insists it will control the strait. They didn't even have that before. Now, according to them, they will. You say, well, then they're not just asking for what they already had. Now they're asking for something extra. Besides the things they want unblocked and everything else they're asking for, right? So that part gets interesting, but anyway, let's move on to other interesting matters as well. There's also an escalation now involving Ukraine and Russia. We were looking a while ago at the images we've been seeing of this Russian refinery that was attacked, right? Well, that's how it is, right? That's the new reality of Russian energy. It's constantly under attack. It's been a war target for some time now because of what it means in this conflict. At the same time, last night could have been tragic. It was the harshest of the past year as Russia attacked several cities, hit Ukraine's capital and several other cities, reigniting tension in the area. So far, 16 people have been reported dead. Yesterday we gave you a preview of this, and now there are reports of 100 people injured. This has been one of the toughest attacks they've had in the capital. Just in Odessa, 9 people lost their lives the previous night. I'm only referring to civilians. Counting the soldiers there is a different issue. I mean, and that's constantly an issue on both sides, which is extremely complicated. And well, right now, President Volodymyr Zelensky reacted strongly and called for more international pressure and rejected any easing of sanctions against Russia. Local authorities confirmed that the attacks included infrastructure, attacks on critical infrastructure, residential areas, and, well, as they say, infrastructure. How is this related to energy and everything? The offensive is happening at a very delicate geopolitical moment. Another thing that stands out is the attack carried out by the United States, where they revealed another blast against a vessel allegedly involved in trafficking in the United States in the Pacific. On this occasion, 3 more people lost their lives. This, I insist, is an attack by the Southern Command that took place yesterday. This was on Wednesday. It really was yesterday, April 15th. According to the official report, the operation is part of a military plan called Southern Spear. Alright, the operation is still ongoing, it's still active. Let's address other important matters too. There's a message from Dan Kane. Come on, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, General Dan Kane, apparently gave quite a powerful message. This is obviously in reference to what's happening in this conflict in Iran, right? Let's discuss the general statements in detail, which is very much related to what he was already warning about earlier. It's along the same lines as what Donald Trump had said. Let's listen a bit to what he says. Yes.
Directed a ceasefire that temporarily paused major combat operations in Iran. The unprecedented effort by America's joint force during Operation Epic Fury set the conditions for this ceasefire. And as the Secretary said, I'd like to emphasize during this pause that the United States Joint Force remains postured and ready to resume major combat operations at literally a moment's notice.
Well, that's part of what he's saying. I mean, basically he says the following. Let's see. We will use force. We will use force if the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is not lifted, or rather, if the Strait of Hormuz is not reopened. The Secretary of Defense and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff were right there. They stated at this press conference, as we can see, that U.S. forces are prepared in case any ship does not comply with the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, despite the 2-week ceasefire. Yes, if they don't follow the blockade, we will use force. This refers to the blockade imposed by the United States. As long as that blockade continues, they are asking them not to leave. In other words, there should be no Iranian oil or energy movement, and they are also asking them to lift the blockade. They want them to both lift and respect the blockade at the same time. We can make the transition again very quickly, even stronger than ever, says Gesset, the Secretary of War. By order of President Trump, the Department of War will ensure that Iran never has nuclear weapons, ever. He says never. He says we would prefer to do it the right way, through an agreement led by our great president and his negotiating team. Or we can do it the hard way, says Gesset himself. Well, it's also part of the constant rhetoric, you know. Everything is fine on one hand, but it could also go very badly on the other, and there's always this back and forth. The United States issues this warning. Well, basically the use of military force is now part of it too. Yesterday there were 10 ships, now there are 14 ships that have had to turn back in Iran. In other words, 14 ships have been warned and told they have to return. More ships are being added in this area of Iran or departing from Iranian ports, as they could come from India, China, or other countries. But if these ships leave from here, if these oil ships leave from this area, they have to turn back. That's the issue, isn't it? There are already 14, they're adding up. There are already 14 at this moment. Meanwhile, Turkey is in shock, and you might remember that a few days ago there was an attack on a school where 9 people died and dozens were injured. A young man, son of a police officer. I'm saying this because it's related to the case. There were a lot of weapons in his house. Due to his father's job, he had many weapons at home for some reason. And the thing is, he brought those weapons to school and started attacking people. No, that's over there in Turkey. I insist, if he was a kid, based on what we know about him now, he was a kid who was really obsessed with shooting, attacking, video games and all that. And the usual rhetoric returns, it's because of video games. It's just that when there's a person who has absolutely no life and just spends all day on video games, obviously something is wrong. Not the video game itself, but the excessive use by the user in that sense. As always, excess obviously shows that something is going on there. He was 14 years old. He shoots 8 students and a teacher, then takes his own life. He brought 5 firearms that belonged to his dad. His dad was a police officer. which opens the debate about gun control but also about something else. That suddenly there are people with mental health issues who aren't being treated. And obviously not enough was done in time, right? It's a serious issue, and now a series of very aggressive comments have started coming out from people who might also have some problems themselves. About 940 accounts were blocked in Turkey because they were basically celebrating this situation, right? 93 groups on Telegram were also shut down. 83 arrest warrants were issued for people who might possibly have this problem. So, I mean, immediate actions are being taken, right? In this sense, this case is also sparking a debate about how social media is being managed. And they will probably use it as an excuse to toughen digital and gun laws in Turkey. We'll see if that happens, but anyway, it's obviously a topic that draws attention today. Let's move on to other important matters. And they haven't been
a better ally than Israel. Together, the four best air forces in the world, the Israeli Air Force, the United States Air Force, and the Naval Air Forces, and the United States Marine Corps joined together and fulfilled our own military objectives time and again, even surpassing them.
Well, that's also part of what the Pentagon itself says about Commander Cooper, by the way, about what's happening over there in Israel and the issue of aviation. So, another message they gave in this press conference also draws attention. Mr. Cooper was there, Pete Heist himself was there, well, several important figures in that regard were present. Commander Cooper also sends this message to the Gulf countries. Let's listen.
As the Secretary and the President said, Bahrain, the Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, and Jordan have been key partners. I met with their commanders and troops. Wow, just as inspiring and just as committed to mutual defense, they defended Americans and they defended their own country. It was inspiring.
Well, that's also part of what Commander Cooper says in this whole report. Another message, but this one is from Pete Heist. Well, this one is about Iran. Let's listen to what he says.
He continues to enforce a strict blockade and ensures that our forces are fully prepared to resume combat operations if this new Iranian regime makes a bad decision and does not accept an agreement. And that's what we're urging this morning, that this new Iranian regime chooses wisely, which is what we'll start with. A message for the military leadership of Iran, for the leadership of KH and the leadership of the IRGC. We are watching you. Our army's capabilities are not the same as yours. Remember, this is not a fair fight. And we know which military assets you are moving and where you are moving them. While you are digging out bombed and devastated facilities, which is exactly what you are doing, we are only getting stronger. You are digging up your remaining launchers and missiles with no ability to replace them. You have no defense industry, no ability to replenish your offensive or defensive capabilities. You only have what you have. You know it and we know it too. You can move things from one place to another, but you really can't rebuild. You can dig up for now, but you can't reconstitute yourselves. But we can. We're reloading with more power than ever before, and with better intelligence. Even more importantly, with better intelligence than ever before, since their movements give them away under our watchful eye. We are ready and targeting their critical dual-use infrastructure, their remaining power generation, and their energy industry. We would prefer not to have to do it, but we are ready to act on the order of our president and with just the push of a button. This blockade, which the president will detail this morning, is the polite way for this to happen. Their energy is not moving and it won't move, and we can do this all day. But it is not destroyed yet. Their energy industry is not destroyed yet. You like to say publicly, Iran, that you control the Strait of Hormuz, but you don't have a navy or real domain awareness. You can't control anything. To be clear, threatening to fire missiles and drones at ships, commercial vessels that are legally transiting through international waters, that's not control. That's piracy. That's terrorism.
It's piracy. That's terrorism, says Pidgeys. Well, they can call it whatever they want. But the fact is that the control is still there. I mean, even without the Navy, if you want. It's true, without the Navy, but the control is there. So in the end, the fact is that there is control over the Strait of Hormuz. But at the end of the day, it's Pidgeys, who is more of a politician than a military man. In any case, kind of a political figure, because at the end of the day, he's a military man. He's a communicator, that's his experience, and he does know how to communicate, right? And he does have good diction, right? In that sense. But aside from that, his rhetoric is just about praising whatever Trump says. That's it. Period. That's all, right? He doesn't provide facts or accurate information. He exaggerates things a lot. He politicizes the Pentagon, which is an issue that has already bothered many people, even the Republicans, because politicization is prohibited. In fact, in progress. And one of the points is that he politicized the Pentagon. Let's go to the comments. Which ones have there been? How's it gone for you? How are you? Thanks for joining us. He says something interesting. Carol Cataneo says, but well, they do go. If the oil is going to China, I doubt they'll allow it. No, it's not about permission. What's happening? That's it. Obviously, China is very upset about that issue. And now, the ships that were supposed to go to China aren't leaving. Ships with Asian flags from different countries in the region or from the Pacific as well. And they've had to turn back oil that still belongs to China. I mean, they bought it from Iran, but for now it's not coming through. That's why the Iranians themselves were saying yesterday that they're going to close the Strait of the Red Sea. It's known that there are calls right now between Iran and China in which there's annoyance and frustration because obviously on one hand China wants to push for the ships to leave, but on the other hand it doesn't want to get involved in the conflict either. This isn't sustainable. Obviously it's not sustainable, but it's what's happening right now. So let's see what reactions come next. That's why yesterday and the day before we also saw China reacting, saying that the strait can't be closed. No, they didn't like the decision at all, obviously Trump's decision. And we'll see how it goes. In theory, this will last until an agreement is reached. In theory, I insist. Why? Well, there's pressure for this to be cancelled, meaning for the closure by the United States to be cancelled. For now, that hasn't happened. The closure is still there. And well, that's a good point, what Carol says. No, well, that's not very... it's not sustainable in the long term or even in the medium term. I mean, it might last a few days, a few weeks, but beyond that, no. Because just imagine there would be a really strong reaction. Now, yes, from Asia, specifically from China. Verderi says, the terrorists talking about terrorism. How are you, Verderi? A big shout out. A big shout out to Sabas too. How have you been? Greetings to Ruben Williams. Ruben Williams says they're not international waters. We've discussed that already. Cheers, Ruben. But no, it's not just that. It's a transit waterway. But in the end, well, clearly everyone just does whatever they want here. That also stands out, but it happens in Argentina too. I think it's worldwide. This is happening in schools, says Amanda. How have you been, Amanda? Greetings. He says this, haha. He says he speaks and talks to NATO. This clown says, hey, let's talk later in the next report that we're going to upload in a little while. I don't know if it's going to be live or recorded, but we're preparing it. Arena, where there is a very tough and risky situation. Here is the split within NATO. We'll talk about that later, because what's happening right now is very interesting. With an attempt by Trump's vice presidents to move the United States away from NATO, but at the same time getting into trouble with Iran and aligning more with the Israeli side, a topic that has been generating a series of harsh criticisms even within his own military groups and his own political followers as well. So, well, that's also a topic we'll be analyzing later on. There are several reports coming up, so we'll keep updating you on whatever happens. Thank you Verderi, Amanda, Eliseo, Sebas, and everyone in the community who is joining the live stream. Please share it. Well, give us a thumbs up and we'll be back later with more updates. Big hug. Have an excellent day. See you later.